When a zoo cat loses her kittens, she is heartbroken. But when she meets two orphaned tiger cubs, she finds her purpose again in adopting and raising them. When they are separated, both go on with their lives. But 3 years later, they are reunited, and the unthinkable happens. Natalia's heart belonged to the zoo, not just the grand Bucharest Zoo itself, with its sprawling grounds and historic buildings, but to the animals who called it home. And among them was one whose heartbreak deeply moved her. Sasha was a tabby cat who had become somewhat of a zoo mascot. She would strut along the paved visitor paths like she owned the place. Children adored her, drawn to her calm nature and the soft, steady purr that always seemed to be humming from her chest. But lately, Sasha had fallen into a deep depression after losing an entire litter of kittens. Natalia stopped by the zoo shop to pick up some kibbles, hoping a little treat might lift the cat's heavy spirits. But then a strange sound broke through the usual zoo noises, a high-pitched, insistent whimper. Natalia frowned. She didn't recognize it. The sound was coming from the direction of the Siberian tiger enclosure. Her smile faded, replaced by a growing sense of concern. With brisk steps, she made her way toward the tall fencing. Tigers weren't known for making pleading sounds. Maybe a cub was sick or there had been a fight. Whatever it was her responsibility to find out. Sasha would have to wait. The cries grew louder as Natalia neared the enclosure, a tiny, desperate sound. She passed through the large gate. The Siberian tigers were a major attraction at the zoo, but today it wasn't the adults that caught her eye. She saw them right away, two impossibly small bundles of striped fur curled up against the far wall of the enclosure. Tiger cubs. They were so tiny and fragile they nearly disappeared into the straw bedding. Their mother stood off to the side, growling, a clear signal that she wanted nothing more to do with them. A wave of dread swept over Natalia. For the past 3 days, the mother tiger had been showing signs of frustration toward her babies. Still, no one expected her to completely reject them. Not here, inside an enclosure shared with adult predators. Newborn tiger cubs without a mother wouldn't survive long. Leaving them here was a death sentence. Natalia stepped carefully into the enclosure, her movements slow and deliberate. The adult tigers were agitated, pacing along the far side of the enclosure. They were unsettled by the cubs' cries and ready to pounce at any moment. One wrong move from Natalia, and things could turn deadly. The cubs hardly reacted as she drew closer. They were skin and bones, their bellies sunken, their fur damp. Whether from their weak movements or from being left out in the humid night air, it wasn't clear. Their chances of survival seemed bleak. She carefully scooped them up, one in each arm. The moment felt surreal. Tigers were symbols of wild strength, yet in her arms, these cubs were as vulnerable as stray kittens. Natalia stepped out of the enclosure and rushed to the keeper's quarters. The other keepers, alerted by the commotion, stood frozen in shock as she gently placed the cubs onto a blanket hastily spread across a work table. "The mother doesn't want them anymore," she said, her voice tight with emotion and urgency. "We need bottles, goat's milk if we have any, blankets, anything warm." Suddenly, the room came alive with action. Calls were made, supplies gathered. The hours and days ahead would be a battle to keep these fragile lives going. As Natalia warmed a makeshift bottle, something tugged at her memory. A small thought, barely formed, scratched at the back of her mind. Then it clicked. Sasha, the zoo cat. Sasha never missed a commotion, the worried voices, the strange urgency pouring out of the keeper's area. Something was definitely up. And where there was activity, there might be treats. Or something more. She patted closer, weaving between the legs of the anxious keepers. Then a sound made her ears perk, a mewing cry, familiar and haunting. The same sound that had haunted her dreams ever since her kittens died. Sasha slipped through the crowd of keepers gathered around the table. She leapt up onto the surface, and for a moment she recoiled in shock. Tiger cubs? 2 of them? Sasha stared, confused at first. These weren't her kittens. But the mothering instinct raging inside her didn't know the difference. Without hesitation, her instincts kicked in. With a soft nudge of her head, she rolled one cub closer and began licking its patchy fur with care. The cub was cold and stiff, barely reacting. Sasha licked harder, and a low rumble grew in her throat. The keepers exchanged astonished looks. Could this really work? The cub began to twitch under Sasha's steady warmth. Her purr grew louder as she shifted to the second cub. There was something fierce and determined in her movements, something Natalia had never seen in her before. This wasn't playful grooming or idle affection. This was a powerful, undeniable urge to mother. Sasha curled herself around the cubs, tucking them under her chin, wrapping her body over them protectively. A hush settled across the keeper's quarters. Natalia didn't dare move. It went against every rule she'd learned about animal handling. But to interfere now, to interrupt this raw, unexpected act of nurturing, felt almost sacred. The debate began the moment Sasha settled into her role as surrogate tiger mom. It was unheard of, completely without precedent. It defied every principle of animal husbandry. The head keeper, Peter, demanded they separate the cat from the tigers. Natalia countered, her voice edged with resolve. The past few hours had been a whirlwind, and Natalia felt fiercely protective of this strange, makeshift little family. "We've never seen anything like this. Shouldn't we at least give them a chance?" she reasoned, her voice guided more by instinct than logic. Over the following hours, everyone agreed that the situation was extraordinary, but opinions were divided about the risks. Could a domestic cat really raise healthy tiger cubs? And what about Sasha's safety? In the end, a careful compromise was made. The cubs wouldn't be removed, at least not right away. A larger enclosure was quickly prepared. Sasha and her adopted cubs would be moved there later that day. The extra space would give them more comfort and reduce the chance of the adult tigers becoming overly agitated. Dr. Pavel, the zoo's veterinarian, was assigned to keep a close watch on Sasha's health. Supplemental feeding would be necessary. A small cat simply couldn't produce enough milk for fast-growing tiger cubs. So Sasha would get enriched food, vitamins, and constant monitoring, whatever it took to support her through this unlikely mission. As the sun began to set, Sasha and the cubs were gently relocated to their new space. Sasha handled it with surprising grace. One by one, she picked up the cubs by the scruff and carried them to a pile of bedding in the corner. The cubs, unaware of the concern swirling around them, snuggled up to their feline mother and drifted off to sleep. Days turned into weeks. A quiet rhythm settled over the zoo. Visitors were not allowed near the enclosure. A "Do Not Disturb" sign hung on the gate. Keepers stepped in quietly to bring Sasha food, refill her water, and remove waste, all while she watched them warily from her corner. Through everything, she remained a powerful presence. Sasha protected the cubs fiercely from any perceived threat. Ilya and Misha grew stronger by the day. Their eyes opened, their faint cries became squeaks, and soon they were stumbling around on shaky paws. Amazingly, Sasha adapted with ease to their increasing size and energy. She played rough and tumble with them, teaching them to stalk and pounce with gentle bites and swats. And when they needed comfort, she curled around them, purring deeply as they nursed for what little milk she still produced. One by one, the zoo staff began to believe. Vet reports were consistently optimistic. Sasha, though a little thinner, was healthy. And the cubs? Thriving. They were gaining weight, their coats shiny, their energy through the roof. The impossible was unfolding before their eyes. Proof of the incredible strength of a mother's love, even when shared across species. News of the unlikely tiger adoption spread like wildfire, first locally, then nationally. Soon, international media outlets were clamoring for access to the Bucharest Zoo. "Zoo cat raises tiger cubs," the headlines screamed. Journalists camped outside the zoo gates. Paparazzi buzzed overhead in helicopters. The entire zoo turned into a whirlwind of noise and chaos. Natalia suddenly found herself swamped, juggling interview requests, fending off pushy photographers, and fielding nonstop questions from well-meaning but persistent animal experts. Everyone had an opinion about what was best for Ilya and Misha. Offers came pouring in to take the cubs, most from sanctuaries or exotic wildlife parks, claiming they could offer better care. These proposals often came with subtle jabs at the zoo's choice to let this unnatural situation continue. Natalia read every message, every offer, and each one only increased her frustration. Yes, this wasn't a typical case, but wasn't the outcome proof enough? Ilya and Misha weren't just surviving, they were thriving. The cubs had round bellies, bright eyes, and playful energy. Over and over, Natalia stood firm. She politely declined every offer. And backed by Dr. Pavel's thorough health reports, she calmly and confidently responded to criticism. Most of all, she fiercely defended her choice to believe in the strange but beautiful family that had formed in the zoo. Ilya and Misha grew fast. Soon, they weren't little cubs anymore. They were lanky teens, playfully towering over their feline mother. Sasha's once smooth tabby coat was often a mess, ruffled from all their playful pouncing. She'd swat them away with exaggerated annoyance, only to be caught in a sneak attack a moment later. Still, underneath the wrestling and wild tumbles, there was real respect. Even as the cubs outgrew Sasha, 2, even 3 times her size, they never forgot who had kept them safe in their earliest days. They'd groom her with rough, clumsy affection, not knowing their tongues were built for stripping meat, not grooming. At night, they'd curl around her like oversized kittens, the deep rumble of their purrs blending with Sasha's softer, steady hum. Visitors would stop and stare in wonder. A sleek tabby cat nestled between massive striped tigers, like a queen flanked by her unusual royal children. 6 months passed in the blink of an eye. By now, Sasha was completely dwarfed by the growing tigers. Their playfulness had shifted to a more focused energy. What had once been light-hearted nips or playful paw swipes could now easily break skin. Natalia knew the day was coming. She had hoped to avoid it, but nature wouldn't change, no matter how remarkable their story was. Sasha couldn't protect herself forever, and Ilya and Misha needed room to truly become the tigers they were born to be. After deep discussion with Dr. Pavel and the headkeeper, the painful decision was made. A large, secure enclosure had been prepared, reinforced fencing, separate areas for feeding and monitoring, and everything the tigers would need. It was ready to become their permanent home. The day of separation arrived with a heavy, quiet tension. Sasha sensed it. She paced, uneasy, letting out low, anxious growls. The normally playful tigers were uncharacteristically calm. They whimpered and stayed close, pressing against her side. The process was swift, almost clinical. Keepers equipped with tranquilizer darts entered carefully. 1 dart for Ilya, then Misha. The big cats dropped into sleep. They were carefully transported to their new enclosure, leaving behind a dazed and heartbroken Sasha. Natalia knelt beside the tabby cat. She tried to offer soft words of comfort and gentle strokes, but Sasha hissed softly, her eyes wide with distress. It tore at Natalia's heart, but she knew this was a necessary kind of pain, one they all had to go through. The following weeks were hard. Ilya and Misha paced restlessly around their new spacious enclosure. They were uneasy, unsettled. Meanwhile, Sasha became a shadow of herself. Her once vibrant purr vanished. She would sit for hours, staring silently at the empty enclosure, her tail flicking with quiet sorrow. But, as always, time dulled the sharpest edges of grief. Ilya and Misha eventually adjusted to their new home. In time, they were introduced to the other big cats at the zoo. They seemed content enough in this new environment. Still, now and then, Natalia would spot them gazing off into the distance, a flicker of longing in their eyes, as if they were waiting for someone. And Natalia knew exactly who they were missing. Sasha had continued on too, but she remained wistful, maybe even more so than the tigers. Nature calls for mothers and cubs to separate eventually. But Sasha could still smell Ilya and Misha nearby, somewhere inside the zoo. To her, that meant her job wasn't finished, and to her, the humans were the ones stopping her from doing what she was meant to do. Natalia felt the heartache from both sides, but no one seemed interested in her opinion anymore. The tigers were doing well enough. And Sasha? To her superiors, she was just a cat. For 3 long years, Natalia tried to make her case, and for 3 years, no one listened. Until something changed. A new manager was hired at the zoo, and she was willing to listen. She was a mother herself, and she understood what it felt like to be separated from your children. She wouldn't wish that pain on anyone, not even on a little tabby cat. So, the next time Natalia asked for a reunion just to see what might happen, the answer was yes. The day dawned bright and tense. Safety protocols were reviewed again and again. Keepers were on standby with tranquilizers. Exit routes were planned down to the smallest detail. Natalia entered the tiger enclosure first. Sasha followed hesitantly, staying close to her heels. Then came the moment of truth. The heavy gate that separated the enclosure from the wide visitor observation space began to slide open. Ilya stepped out first, then Misha. They blinked against the sunlight as they emerged. The huge cats froze. Ears twitched, nostrils flared. Had they forgotten the scent of the tabby cat who raised them? Time had passed. Nature had taken them down different paths. Natalia held her breath. Her heart pounded like a drum. Would this be a joyful reunion, or a painful reminder that their bond had faded? Ilya moved first. He crossed the open space toward her. Sasha stiffened, but in her green eyes, recognition sparked. Ilya lowered his massive head and gently nuzzled her side. Misha came next. A soft gasp escaped Natalia's lips. The tigers began to purr, a deep, vibrating rumble that made the ground beneath her tremble. Sasha pressed against their sides, her own purr rising quickly in a powerful crescendo. There were no swats, no playful growls, only pure, unmistakable affection. Tears blurred Natalia's vision. She was witnessing the impossible, right in front of her eyes. This wasn't just a reunion. It was proof that the love Sasha, an ordinary house cat, had poured into these cubs had left a permanent imprint on their souls. It was a love that crossed the boundaries of species, a powerful, undeniable truth. Do you have a story of a mother of one species adopting little ones from another species? Please tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear your story. For now, though, we're done. Catch you in the next video.